So I'm just going to give you a run through of my Spring Spectacular Festival at Tunnel Barn Farm, and it literally finished yesterday, so it's nice and fresh in the memory, and hopefully we can run through my matches. We got GoPro footage of all the days, so we can talk through all the days and you'll be able to see me fishing and stuff. So we'll give you a little run through. So obviously it's a 3-day event and it's actually sponsored by Shimano. Now Shimano have actually put a lot into it. For the top 3 places, there was a pole each. There was an X5, an X3 and an X2 for first, second and third. So amazing sponsorship from Shimano, and like I say, it's 3 days at Tunnel Barn Farm. So going into day 1, I just wanted a peg in the wind because I'd fished there on the Saturday as a little practice match, and I drew peg 19 on extension, and it was really windy on Saturday. It was like overcast and really windy, and I had a great day just fishing meat short around my feet, like a meat in the edge, meat short, and then meat a little bit further out. And I actually ended up winning the match that day on the practice match with 166 pound, and it gave me a little bit of info that meat was the bait on this festival and fishing it short was the way to go. But running on to day 1 now, the conditions had changed a lot. Over the weekend it had been windy and overcast, but coming into day 1 it was sunny, it was bright, it was flat calm, and I was like, I didn't know if meat was going to be the bait, so we'll have to see how we go. But I drew 42 on the high pool. Now luckily for me, I wanted to be in the wind, and when I actually got to my peg, the wind was actually blowing into it, and all the scum and everything was in my little corner of this high pool, and it's really deep there. But I thought with the wind blowing down, it had 140 pound there on the practice match I actually fished. I thought, yeah, that's great, there's going to be lots of fish there to catch. Hopefully meat short. I set up meat on a short kit, a short 4 and halfway down with number 5, and it was actually 7 foot deep there. And then I set it up on a short kit and a short 4, and it was still probably 6.5 foot deep there. And then I set up in the edges with meat, and I did get all my shallow rigs out for if I had to fish shallow there, if they didn't want to go down on the bottom. But started the match there, threw my meat in short, and within a minute I had one a pound, and I thought, yeah, here we go, happy days, they're on the meat short here, I'm gonna have a nice day. And then I went back in, and I think I foul up one, and then I sat there for like another half an hour, and it never had an indication, never moved, and I thought, this wasn't the plan now. Never really caught anything on that. And then I tried fishing a little bit closer, seeing if they wanted to be in shallower water, and that wasn't very good. And I fished 4x16 floats on both of those lines because it was really deep there. I wanted to get my bait down to the bottom, and it was just no good. There was just no fish down there. And then to my left, I actually plumbed up in about 3.5 foot of water down my left there, where I threw some meat there, and I had a little go there, and it still never moved there. So I was like, so my actual plan now, the match hasn't gone to plan. Obviously no fish short, no fish in my margins, but I still kind of knew meat was the bait. I was hearing on the other lakes, so still catching on meat. And I started then to fire some maggots in down the middle to prime for fishing shallow, because I thought they don't want to go down on the bottom in any depth of water. It's bright sunshine, it's flat calm, so I thought I'd just fire some maggots in to fish shallow. Now I had a little go and I caught 3 or 4, but I'd have to flick in a little 3B8 Maggie rig with number 11 strung out, and I'd catch a few, but I'd miss a lot of bites, catch a few little roach and stuff in between. And to be honest, that wasn't going very good. I tried on the bottom out there, like I replumbed my short rig at 11 metres on the bottom where I fired some maggots in, and that never went under either, or it did, but I think I caught 6 or 7 on that. And that was just how my match went. I just tried to keep alternating, fishing shallow on the bottom and then meat short and meat in the edges. And to be honest, I was going around all my lines and it just wasn't going to plan. I think it got to, so the match finished at 4, and I think it got to about 2:45, and I just caught a very odd F1. I wasn't doing very good at all. Looking to my left, I had Dale Shepherd on the end peg. He was catching carp to the island on hard pellets. Paul Holland was next to him on 48 and 50 on high pool they were. And Paul was catching some on casters across, and I didn't even bring any casters on this festival because I thought it was all just going to be meat short fishing. It's going to be overcast, it's going to be windy, so I didn't even bring any casters. So I had maggots and meat on my side tray, and I thought with an hour and 15 minutes ago I need to do something. Like absolutely nothing was happening, so got all my shallow rigs out, I got more pole sections out, and it's actually 16 metres with the short 4 to the island, and I fired some maggots there and they went everywhere, and I went over there with some overshotted rig And to be honest, I caught an odd little stocky F1 there till the end. Only very small ones, like a pound and a half fish, not the old big resident fish. And I ended up weighing 53 pound, and that was actually 4th in the section. That was not a very good performance at all, to be honest. There was a 60 odd pound, and then there was an 88, and then Dale on the end peg won the section with 103 pound. But looking back, I just fished totally the wrong match for the conditions. Obviously read it from the weekend that it was overcast and windy, that they wanted to fish short, they wanted to feed short and actually on the bottom. But coming into the actual match, it was bright, it was sunny, it was flat calm. And I just know if I had some casters and I could fire them a lot more accurate across into the reeds where all the fish were just wanting to chill in the sun, out of the sun, in the reeds, I definitely would have caught some more fish doing that. So, don't know if I could have actually got, I could have got 3rd, I could have got 60 odd pound, 88 pound, I've only had 50 pound, that's quite a lot, but maybe that was achievable, but I couldn't have won the section. There was no chance of me catching, I would have had to win the lake with 103 pound, I'd had to have beaten that to win, and I just don't think that was achievable for my peg, to be honest. But definitely could have caught more, definitely could have got 3rd, maybe 2nd at a push, but that meat short on there was a waste of time. In the edge, there was a few people at the end saying they caught some fish in ground bait and meat in the edge, or ground bait and maggots, and I plumbed up in that shallower water, but at that point I was catching a few fishing an overshotted rig across. So I didn't even bother trying to fish for a carp in the edge, but maybe if I'd done that, maybe I would have weighed more. So 3rd was definitely achievable, 2nd maybe at a push. So learned a lot to go into day 2. So going into day 2, and I've drawn peg 17 on the canal pool, and that's a little narrow peg around the back, and it's on the narrower side of the lake. But the problem is I'm in with peg 1 and peg 23. Those two are end pegs with the wind blowing down, and peg 3 on that other side is a really hot peg as well, because it's really wide and it's just a lot deeper water, and it just felt like on the day all the bigger fish were actually sat on that bank of the lake. So coming onto my peg, it's probably only 11 metres wide, my peg, and it was about 4 foot deep down the middle at the deepest. And again, it's the same conditions, flat calm, not much wind at all. And I just thought, I'm going to struggle here. But Lee Thornton had been on peg the day before and he had 116 pound. So I did think, maybe I could catch a few. So I actually set up, again, that meat short line. I set it up on a short ket, short 4 and a 5, and holding the 6 to start with. And because it was so narrow and so shallow, what I did is I plumbed up left and right of my peg. So I plumbed up down the track to the left and down the track to the right, and then I'd add a little plumb up to see if I could bring them shorter later on, and it was pretty much the same depth there. So on that line I just set up a 4x10 float, that, and 4x10 1.7mm Maggie, just a couple of, 4 number 10s and then a number 10 dropper, and just a little 4-inch hook length on that. And one hook that's really done me good on these festivals fishing with meat is fishing a 14 F1 pellet hook. Now it's quite a light hook, that is, but it's quite a big hook, and when you're fishing 6mm meat, you can bury your 6mm meat in that hook, and when you get a bite you can just lift and you're not striking your meat off all the time. So a 14 F1 pellet hook for F1s when you're meat fishing is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I'd set up those track rigs anyway, and then I'd set up down the edges where I was going to start with fishing micros and expander, because I'd heard that it's taking people a lot of time to get this meat fishing to go, and just starting on pellets I thought I might get off to a little bit of a faster start. So I fished pellets in the edge to start with, and then I plumbed up another rig in my right hand edge for just throwing some meat in there as well. So yeah, that was it. I think to start with, see, I fed my micros, went in with an expander down my left hand edge, and I caught 2 or 3 little stockies straight away. Went in again and nothing happened, and with it only being 2.5 foot deep in the edge, what I decided to do was just pot some ground bait there to try and draw some fish in, because they weren't coming just to micros. I didn't feel like they were going to come to just a few bits of loose fed meat, so I decided to big pot some ground bait in my left hand edge just to draw some fish in there. And then whilst I did that, we're about 40 minutes in now, I dropped onto my 4 foot line to the left, where I've been throwing a bit of meat in, and I dropped on that, and I think I caught 2 straight away, and I thought that's quite nice. And then I dropped in my right, because I said I'd plumbed up left and right down the track, And to my right, I went in and caught 2 as well. And I thought, that's quite nice. If I can just bounce those all day, I'll have a lovely day. But I went back to the left and caught 1. And then went back to the right and it never moved. And then I went to the left and it never moved. And those lines had just completely died as well, to be honest. And then my only other line I'd plumbed up on the day was down the right-hand edge again, throwing meeting. So I knew meat was the bait. Everyone had been catching on meat. And I went in there and I caught a little stocky. And that was it. And then I went back to the left and right track lines and nothing happened on them, or I caught 1 or 2 but not a lot happened. And then because I got these little bushes across and it was quite bright again, quite bright and flat like the day before, I thought, right, I'm not going to waste any time here. I'm just going to fire some maggots across. I've not got any casters still, but I'm going to fire some maggots across, see if they wanted to be shallow in the cover. But I tried that, and to be honest I only caught 1 on it. And I did it for a little bit, like half an hour, 40 minutes. I thought, no, I'm going to scrap that. Could see some lads firing casters in across further down and they weren't catching many more. So I thought, that's not the winning tactic anyway. So I scrapped all that kind of stuff and I tried to make these track lines working down the edge. And I went back down the edge where I fed this ground bait and I caught for a little bit. I caught I think I got 8 fish down there, just potting in like a large guru pole pot of ground bait with some micros in, and just fishing an expander or a piece of meat. And I think I caught 8 down there quite fast, and then that kind of died again. So I gave it a big pot and I went short on my left and right track lines, and I just caught odd fish all day. And then it got to, there was 2 hours 15 to go, and obviously I'm fishing a short hit, a short 4, a 5, holding the join of the 6, and I'm throwing meat there and I'm having some liners and I'm catching a few fish, but I'm still getting liners. So I'm thinking they're coming up off the bottom here. So what I decided to do is take that number 6 section off, and I fished on the join of the 5 and the short 4, like really close there, throwing meat. And to be honest, I just caught there then, steady to the end, alternating there, and I actually ended up plumbing to the left as well, doing exactly the same. And I just bounced fish off those 2 lines all day then. I had a nice last 2 hours. Went back in the edge and caught a few as well. It was quite good, to be honest, last 2 hours. But I ended up weighing 88 pound on this day. Peg 1 had 126 pound. Peg 23, these are both M pegs, he had 97 pound. I had 88 pound. And then peg 3 had 146 pound as well. And when I was watching them weighing, it was noticeable there were bigger fish on that side of the lake. And to be honest, I didn't even realise. I thought everyone was just catching the same stamp fish as me. But mine were little stockies, to be honest, on meat. They were like 12 ounce to 1.5 pounds, most of them. And I caught quite a few, but they only weighed 88 pound. And then I watched other people weighing, and Andy Bennett, he was next to me on this day. He wasn't in my section, but he was on 19. And he'd had a match just fishing ground bait and micros in the edge. And he fished there most of the day, and I thought I had more fish than him. I thought I was going to beat him, but he ended up weighing 97 pounds. So he just beat me. But I saw in his net he caught a lot of bigger fish fishing in the margins, fishing in the shallow water. So I feel like I did mess up on this day again, where I should have spent longer fishing in the edge than I should have done short. The meat fish short were definitely smaller than the fish to catch in the margins. So that was a lesson learned. But to be honest, I never even realised until I saw them lift the nets out. But then going back onto the other side of the lake, obviously peg 3, he fished down the edge and short most of the day. And he weighed 146 pound, and his fish, and that side of the lake's a lot wider, and his fish were just a lot bigger than mine. They were like 2-3 pounders, whereas my fish, they were only a pound and a half fish. So couldn't really have done much more on this day. Like I said, fished in the edge a little bit longer with ground bait, or ground bait and maggots on the hook, or ground bait and meat. I should have caught a few more bigger fish doing that. But the only person I think I could have beat was peg 23, which was the other end peg, and he had 97. I had 88. I would have feel like I could have beat him fishing more positively for bigger fish in the edge. But realistically, I had no chance of winning. Again, obviously 126 pound on peg 1, and Alex Major on peg 3, he had 146 pound. He had a brilliant day, and I just don't think it was capable. I think 3rd was the best I could have done that day. But again, I come 4th, so I'm on 8 points now. Bit of a disaster in this festival, because even 1 drop point can cost you dearly. So I'm on 8 points now, running into day 3. And to be honest, all I'm hoping for now is an absolute screamer on house pool. Peg 8 on house would have done me great, but didn't end up there. I ended up on club 17, again 17, which is in the section to the right. I've got 2 end pegs to contend with, but it definitely was a harder section. But club fished really well the day before. It was one with 130 odd pounds, so thought I could get a good day's fishing. But my peg, Steve Parry, was on the day before and he had 60 pounds, so I thought could be tricky. But the next peg along had 122, so I thought, oh, could catch a few. But again, had the similar kind of match, stuck to my meat tactics. I plumbed up in 4 foot in the deep water for fishing meat. I plumbed up in my left edge in 2.5 foot for fishing meat there. And then I plumbed up right tight to the bank like the day before. Should have fished in shallow water with that ground bait. I did it to my right, and it was about 15 inches deep. And I just fed I fed ground bait and micros there and fished meat or maggots on the hook. And I started off in the deep water on meat and I never had a bite. I potted ground bait immediately in my edge to my right in the shallow water, and there was plumes of mud coming up there. And so I went in there and thought I could catch them, but could I heck? Never moved. Mud was coming up, they were swirling, but I couldn't catch one. So I went in the 2.5 foot line on meat and I caught 3 or 4 big F1s there the first hour, but they probably went 12 pound with 3 or 4 fish, so they were worth catching. No one in my section was really catching much at all. Tried that meat in the deep water, that never budged, to be honest. It didn't budge all day, never actually had a bite in the deepest water on meat. They just, with the conditions, they just didn't really want to sit in that deep water. Everything just wanted to sit in slightly shallow water, in cover. And where I was fishing my meat in this 2.5 foot, it was next to some reeds, and they'd knock every now and again, and I just knew they were there, and then I could drop on it and catch one. I tried to do the same in the right hand edge. I tried coming away from the bank in 2.5 foot and fishing meat there, and I caught a few, but it wasn't as good as to my left. And I just bounced those 2 lines for a little bit, and then probably with 45 minutes to go, I went down the edge again in the shallowest water, and eventually I caught a few and had a little run there to the end, fishing maggots or meat on the hook with I started on a large Guru pole pot down the edge that day with ground bait and micros in, but I just didn't think it was enough bait. Like, one would come in, but it would take ages for it to come in. So what I changed to was a Guru paste pot, which holds quite a lot more ground bait, and I just fished that on the end of the pole, and to be honest, that kept them coming in then until the end. And I think I caught 11 fish there in the last 40 minutes, and yeah, that jumped me up massively because I had nothing before then. So I ended up weighing 58 pound, and I actually won the section on the last day. So it was nice to finally get a result on the day, but no good overall. 9 points. It stood me absolutely nowhere, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure where I even finished. Leon Seabright, he won it with a perfect score. He had 3 points, and all he's done all week, to be honest, is fish meat around his feet. He drew peg 8 on house the first day and won the match doing it. I think he had 150 pound. The second day, I can't remember where he was the second day, but again he did the same, new 31 pool, a peg you wouldn't expect to do any good on that day. It was a peg with no like features, nothing to fish to, and he just fished around his feet again with meat, and he caught really well and won his section. And on the last day he drew peg 19 on canal, where Andy Bennett had been the day before, and caught 90 odd pound, and he just went there and caught 140 pound again, just fishing meat around his feet. They're hardly feeding anything. One thing I've learned, like listening and watching all the videos back, the people who are doing really well this week, all they've done is fish this meat, but you've got to be on the right pegs, and all they've been throwing in is literally 2 or 3 cubes, 2 or 3 cubes on a top kit, 2 or 3 cubes there, 2 or 3 cubes there, like hardly anything, and having 3 or 4 different lines, feeding next to no meat was the way to go. So that's that festival. I've learned a few little lessons. Obviously, one thing that was massive for me is reading the conditions. I really messed up on the first day, just thinking it was just going to be all meat. Didn't even take any casters to fish to cover, and there's been a few people catch on casters to cover. I definitely would have done on the first day. Would have caught some on casters to the cover. Second day, I don't know if I would have, but it would have been nice to have the option anyway. With me, I literally just took some meat, took some ground bait, and that was my plan, when I should have read the conditions better. Obviously these F1 venues, it changes day by day, so even if you have one good day and it's overcast and windy, catching on meat short, it doesn't mean when it's bright, like really sunny, flat calm, it doesn't mean it's going to work again. But that was that festival. bit of a disappointing start to the year. Framed in every festival I fished last year, but this year got off to a bad start. But we've got the Western Pools Festival coming up in a couple of weeks. I've not been there for a while. Last time I went there I qualified for Fishermania, so fingers crossed we can get off to a better start on that festival, and we will do exactly the same. Obviously bring the GoPros and film those for you and give you a recap of those festivals when they happen.